Today we're diving into my 11-day cruise aboard the Norwegian Prima, a ship often called the black sheep of Norwegian cruise line. Is it as bad as the reviews claim, or can it be the perfect sanctuary for someone like you, an introvert, a solo traveller? Let's find out. As someone who recharges in the quieter, reflective moments, one of the biggest concerns on any cruise is finding spaces that allow me to exist peacefully. I'm not talking about retreating to my cabin. I mean open spaces where I can relax, read, or simply take in the world without feeling overwhelmed. The Norwegian Prima does boast 17 lounges and bars, but if you're someone who values that inner zen, only 2 spaces truly stand out: the Observation Lounge and Ocean Boulevard. Now let's talk about the Observation Lounge. On paper, it's perfect. And don't get me wrong, when it works, it is brilliant. It has floor-to-ceiling windows, offering breathtaking views, cosy seating, and what's important for me is seating that is more horizontal. Anyway, it has breathtaking views, cosy seating, and a calm atmosphere, ideal for reading or quietly soaking in the scenery. In reality, it's a bit complicated. Unlike the extensive lounges found on other NCL ships like the Bliss, but that is soon to be downsized, which is very annoying, the Prima's Observation Lounge feels like a scaled down actually, it's not an afterthought. That is too harsh. It is very nice, it's just, it could be bigger. It's a narrow rim around the Galaxy Pavilion, which makes finding a seat during peak times a bit of an uphill battle. And then there are the dreaded private event signs. These were really frustrating, to the point, and I borderlined on being a bit angry about it. On this cruise, the lounge was frequently appropriated for art shows, meetups and other gatherings, leaving little room for the average guest. Now, people are going to come back on this and go, it's not taken up that often, it's only half of it, and they'll give all sorts of reasons why I shouldn't be as frustrated. But I encountered that sign too many times for my liking. So its size and availability wasn't perfect for a space meant to be a key feature for every guest. Thankfully, I had fantastic weather. If not for that, the lack of usable indoor space might have turned this lounge from a minor inconvenience into a deal breaker. Disappointingly, NCL is rapidly downsizing all the observation lounges, even the ones that started off much bigger, like the Norwegian Blisses, right? So it won't be long before all of them are more Prima sized. Sadly, the drive for every non-luxury cruise line to get their dollars per gross ton up continues apace. Ocean Boulevard is where the Prima redeems itself. This sprawling 44,000 square foot promenade wraps around the ship, offering panoramic views, chic seating, again, some are horizontal, and even open air dining. It's a space designed for introspection and connection with nature, while you can get a drink, read a book and observe. Perfect for anyone craving a moment of calm or inspiration. I spent hours there, whether it was during sailaways or quiet mornings in port. With the sun shining down and a mild breeze, Ocean Boulevard became my sanctuary. But the observant among you will know this was a cruise to Norway and Iceland. I was very lucky I could use Ocean Boulevard in that way because of the weather we had. If the weather had been poor, this entire experience might have been different. Okay, let's talk about hot tubs, right? I like hot tubs, but what was fascinating about the Norwegian Prima, and it was definitely a bit unique to this cruise. You see, because while I'm about solitude, and the truth is, even introverts crave meaningful conversation, right? That's the key. Small talk, no. Meaningful conversation, yes. And on this cruise, those moments happen to be in the hot tub. From deep dives into how NFL franchises operated to what it was like being a cop in Orlando, I can't even remember all the topics, but they were absolutely fantastic. To hearing other stories about solo travellers, and let's say the ins and outs of, what can I call it, not solo but single travellers, that was like amazing. The hot tub became an unexpected connection hub. Later in the cruise I discovered that the main pool was actually surprisingly well heated. So it was ideal for a quiet swim backwards and forwards, get some exercise in that wasn't walking around Ocean Boulevard. I mean, for someone like me who thinks anything between 10 and 15 degrees Celsius is perfectly tolerable weather, fantastic. The main problem with Norwegian Prima came actually, surprisingly, from one of the conversations in the hot tub, is who is the ship designed for? It's not optimised for cold weather cruising, despite spending a chunk of its time in destinations like Iceland and Norway. There's no solarium or indoor pool, features that are, I would say, almost essential for cruisers in that sort of climate. Yet it also struggles to meet the needs of warm weather cruisers, because despite the vast outside space of Ocean Boulevard, there isn't much by water pool space. In the hot tub, one travel agent summarised it best: the Prima seems to be designed for no one in particular, so she would be very unsure, even though she enjoyed her trip, of exactly who to recommend it for. It's almost as if the ship's creators were trying to emulate an upscale boutique vibe, like Viking cruises, right? The proper luxury lines. But forgot they were designing a vessel for 3,000 passengers rather than 300. Features like go-karts and the Galaxy Pavilion dominate valuable space, while staples like libraries and expansive lounges are sacrificed. This, more than anything else, explains its low cruise critic score, as when you have a cruise ship that's designed for no one, who's going to give it 5 stars? Okay, let's discuss nickel and diamond, because it comes up for NCL, and as an introvert who's wanting his zen spaces, the last thing I want to do is people trying to sell me stuff. You don't get sold stuff on NCL. The most you might get is the odd voicemail message just reminding you of something. But NCL, for some reason, are infamous for nickel and diming, despite the fact that I don't get it. So is the criticism warranted? Well, obviously, from my opinion, no. Well, let's go into it. In my experience, it's not as bad as people make it out to be. Although what people complain about is very similar on other cruise lines that fall outside of the luxury bracket. I don't want to pay extra for some of the things that NCL charges for, as I don't want them upping my base price. So I choose not to pay for them, right? I want to choose for the go-karts, for example. It's important to note this is constantly changing, and my opinion is based on trips in May 2024 and earlier. That said, the Prima introduces another kind of cost that's harder to ignore: the cost of space. Exclusive areas like the Haven and the Vibe Beach Club take up significant real estate. So while I'm happy for them to be things I don't have to pay for and only pay for if I want to, I'm less happy that it makes less space available for other things. Then there are the revenue generating attractions like the go-karts and the Galaxy Pavilion. One dominates the pool area and restricts the pool space, and then we've discussed how the Galaxy Pavilion encroaches on what could have been observation lounge space. These features are fun for some, but they feel out of place on a ship aiming for an upscale boutique vibe. The result is you're constantly reminded of the opportunity cost of how the space is used. Spaces that could have been used for lounges, quiet areas, or even a library are instead filled with activities designed to generate revenue. Now, the captain did bring up a point about there not being a library, and I'm not beholden to a library needing to exist, but what I did note is while he's correct that not many people use the library for books because they all have Kindles and whatever else, what the library might get used for is some of the events that kept stealing the observation lounge. This trade-off feels particularly stark on a ship with a limited number of indoor areas and it being, half the time, a cold weather itinerary. Finally, I just want to get in, right? And I say this on a lot of videos, but it's worth repeating every time. What's it like being a solo traveller on Norwegian Prima? Will I stand out? Will you feel awkward? On Norwegian Prima, the answer is refreshingly simple. No one cares, right? This has been the same on every NCL ship I've been on, and the one on the P&O ship I've been on. No one cares. They don't care when you strike up a conversation. They don't care when you're eating in a restaurant. Over 11 days, I never felt out of place or judged. In fact, at least on NCL, you just encounter solo travellers everywhere, right? You know, they're not in short supply. This no one cares vibe has been consistent across all my NCL cruises, and it's been one of the reasons I've kept coming back. So did the Norwegian Prima deliver the introspective solo experience I sought? Yes. But I have to give some caveats. The stunning outdoor spaces and the mild weather made this cruise unforgettable. But if the weather hadn't cooperated, or if I wasn't travelling alone, the experience could have been very different. Finding indoor space, especially in popular areas, was challenging for groups or families. You'd see them roaming around the ship like they were being herded like cattle as they looked for seating for 4+ people. You'd also see areas meant for one thing, say the Starbucks seating, being appropriated for other purposes like large groups playing games. Why? Probably because the observation lounge had been taken over by a private event or was full, or there wasn't a library where people would often do these things. This is what a non-existent library or the observation lounge, not being big enough or not existing, should be used for. Reflecting on this journey, I've realised how much I rely on outdoor spaces to recharge, or spaces with a lot of visibility of outside, right? A ship like the Prima works beautifully for someone like me. But if you're considering the ship for colder climates, be prepared for its limitations. Ultimately, the Prima isn't perfect, but it gave me the moments of solitude, connection and wonder I crave as an inner pathfinder on this trip, as the weather played along. And sometimes that's enough.